Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Priscilla here with another episode of Storycraft. In fact, if I know what I'm talking about, and I rarely do, I think it's episode 11. Can you believe that we have been through 10 of these, you guys? For those of you following along, Storycraft is where I craft, and then tell you guys a story while I'm crafting. And if you were following along, you didn't actually need that. That's for people who are new here. Welcome. That was your recap to what's happening here. So I'm going to tell you guys a story. You're going to watch me craft, and then we'll talk about it. Sound like a plan? Great. Awesome. Welcome. So let's get into it. Today is a story requested by my buddy April at Pink Oddbird. So thank you, April. This is the Grimm's Brothers tale of the Robber Bridegroom. And I'm already going to drop a content warning here, guys, because it gets pretty grisly. It's not a chipper tale. So if you were looking for good vibes today, go back to last week. The good vibes were there. This one's a little dark, although you'll see. We'll get into it. It's not super bad, I guess, conclusively. At any rate, I don't have a lot of facts for you about this tale. It is just something sort of generally told and retold on like that European Germanic side. So there's a couple of different versions of this. I'm going with the version I know best, which is the one straight out of Grimm. And yeah, we're gonna get into it. I think I've rambled enough. So once upon a time, there was a miller who had a daughter, a single daughter, his only child, and she was the apple of his freaking eye because she was super beautiful. I need to have like a bingo card for fairy tale tropes so you guys can play along every episode and see if you hit the bingo, because what a trope. Anyways, the miller's daughter, who has no name, it doesn't matter. She's so beautiful, we don't need to give her a name. She's so important to him that he wants to set her up with a really good match, because clearly, even though he's just a miller, his daughter is super pretty, and so she deserves the world and deserves to have all the finer things in life. So he rejects a lot of people's proposals because he's looking for the perfect match for her. And one day he happens to come across it. It happens to be an older man, which is not great. And he finds this man. He happens to be very wealthy, very charming, and kind of handsome. So he sets them up, and he's like, my daughter is going to be your future husband. And she's like, ugh, gross. Immediate red flags, but I don't know why. So she, over the course of a couple of weeks, gets to know this man, and she's like, something is just not connecting here for me. I can't put my finger on it, but this guy gives me the ick. And the miller's daughter is like not thrilled, and she tries to like talk to her dad a little bit, and she's like, hey, I don't think this is gonna work. I mean, he's so old and skeevy. Like, we don't know anything about this guy. He just showed up one day, said that he was rich, and her dad's like, no, you can see how well he's dressed, so clearly he has to have money, because you can't buy a suit like that without any money. And every time he comes, he brings you a wonderful gift. And she's like, yeah, it just feels like he's trying to buy my affection, and that's also a red flag to me. And the dad's like, no, you're only pretty, not intelligent, so forget all that. And her suitor is like, hey, beautiful, wonderful future bride-to-be, you should really come to my place. I'll host a grand party for you. I'll show you my marvelous estate, and you'll get to see all these wonderful things. And, if you think the gifts that I bring you are great, just wait till you see the luxury that I live in and all the things I have to offer for you. And she's like, I don't want to go to your house, actually. And he's like, no, you absolutely should. And you're just a woman, so it doesn't really matter what you want. You're going to come. I'm going to tell your dad that you're coming. He's going to make you go. So that's how things work in this time and place. And she's like, great, cool. That's awesome. I don't want autonomy. You're right. So her bridegroom goes and he asks the dad, or basically tells them, like, hey, I've set up this great meal. Have your daughter come to my place so she doesn't get lost. I'm going to scatter ashes on the trail from your house to mine. And you guys don't, you don't need to come. Just Just her. And the dad's like, cool, no problems there. I see no way that this could be strange or unusual or threatening or anything like that. Absolutely, I will send my daughter deep into the woods on her own, so she can just have a cool dinner with you, unaccompanied. What could possibly happen? You're a cool guy, and you keep bringing me gifts every time you show up, actually, and I can, very easily sell my love. So you have it. You're great. And she's like, God damn it. So the next day, she gets her little self together so she can go have this meal at this creepy dude's house. And she steps outside her home and she sees that there is in fact a trail of ashes leading into the woods. So she stuffs her pocket full of peas and lentils and she heads off. And as she walks down the trail of ash into the deep dark wood, she starts to scatter the peas and lentils along the trail in her wake so that she can find her way home, because she just has bad vibes all around. And unlike the dickhead birds in the Hansel and Gretel story, none of these birds show up to eat it. So these lentils and peas, totally safe. Don't even worry about them. So she heads up into these woods and she keeps getting deeper and deeper in the woods. And she's like, for a rich man, he sure lives really far from town. This is so strange to me. But eventually, right before night falls, she makes it up to this house, and it is not a palatial mansion like you would expect. It's just a freaking cabin in the woods. And she's like, that's red flag number 10,000, but I'm gonna go in. Nobody's there to greet her at the door. In fact, the entire place seems empty. There's not even a fire burning in the hearth, and she's just like, well. And around her, she sees all sorts of manner of riches and things like that, but not in any sort of purposefully decorated way. More like they just sort of throw stuff where it lands as they come in the door, kind of how when you get home from work, you just start shrugging off all your clothes. That's how these riches are. But she doesn't see any people around. So she starts to walk through the house. She sees a beautiful bird in a cage, and the bird looks at her and is like, girl, you're in trouble. And it actually says that. It speaks to her. And it tells her, you're in trouble. You need to turn back. Sweet girl, please leave. It says something specific and rhymey, and I don't remember that, so sorry, guys. But that's the gist of it. So she's like, I don't take advice from birds, thanks. And she continues walking through room to room, and she hears the bird call out to her again, and it's like, sweet girl, please leave. The universe is telling you, through me, the bird, to get the hell out of this house. You're in danger. And she's like, again, I don't take advice from animals. I know my own mind. And she continues to go from room to room. It's empty. She can't find a single person there. So she starts to walk around a little bit concerned, because she's like, is this even the right house? Am I supposed to be in here? And she sees that there is smoke coming up from the cellar and a light that seems to be present down there. So she's like, oh, maybe they're all down here. So she goes down the stairs into the cellar, and the only thing she finds is an old woman next to a cook fire and a giant bubbling pot. And at the pot, this woman looks up and she's like, oh, you're early. And she's like, I took all day to get here. How could I possibly be early? I'm supposed to come have dinner with my bridegroom, and he's not here. And she's like, you stupid idiot, you're in danger. These men keep me hostage. Your bridegroom is actually our famous robber who has a whole troop of bandits who live here, and every night they lure young women to this place and then they eat them, because they're also cannibals. They're cannibal robbers. So they're not the cool kind of robbers like Robin Hood. They eat people. And she's like, well, that's certainly unexpected. I don't want to get eaten. And the old lady's like, look, okay, I'll help you. I'm really tired of being trapped here and working for these guys. They basically kidnapped me and kept me here and make me keep this pot of water boiling and ready for them so that they can dunk their next victim into it. But yeah, I'll help you out. And as they're discussing this, they hear the door open upstairs and a group of men walk in. So the old woman tells our heroine to hide behind a couple of giant caskets in the corner, and after the robbers have eaten their fill, she will help her escape in the night. And so the girl ducks behind the caskets, and all the little band of robbers plus the bridegroom comes downstairs, and she sees, through little cracks in between the casket, that they have a young woman with them already, which you double booked for the same day. Rude. But unfortunately, super rude if you're this young woman, because they throw her onto the table, they strip her of her clothes, and then they start plying her with glasses of wine, and they give her 3 different cups, one white, one red, and one yellow, and the yellow one kills her, so she dies. She's done been poisoned. I don't know why they wasted time with the other 2 cups. They could have just poisoned her straight away, but I guess they wanted to marinate their meat. Blech, blech. So gross. But at any rate, they chop her up, and as they're like getting ready to prepare her for this cook pot, one of the robbers notices that on her finger she has a ring that's made of gold, and he's like, "Oh, I'm trying to get this ring off because that's a good piece of merch." And as he's fighting to get this ring off, he realizes he's not going to be able to pull it off her finger. Her fingers are all swollen from the wine, I guess, and the death. And so he takes his knife and he cuts off her finger. But as he's doing so, it jumps out of his hand and rolls behind the caskets that our young bride-to-be is hiding behind. And so he goes back there to reach behind it, and he's sticking his hand in the crack or reaching around, and our girl is like dodging left and right, trying not to be seen, trying not to make any sounds. She can see the finger right next to her foot, but she can't move it because they'll know she's back there. And eventually the old woman's like, leave it till dinner's done. We'll get it in the morning when there's more light. Like, it's not even that important. The finger's not going anywhere. And he's like, you know what, you're right. And I'm also starving. So they scoop up the meat of this woman into the pot. They chow down after it's been cooked. They eat until they are absolutely bloated. They eat their fill, and then they drink until they are passed out messes on the floor. They just fall asleep on the floor of the cellar where they were sitting. They just collapse down there, which why have a cabin with a bunch of rooms if you're not going to use them? I don't know. It's gross robber men who eat people. I really shouldn't try to analyze it too much, but once they're all asleep, our heroine picks up the finger with the ring on it, puts it in her pocket, and the old lady comes and gets her out from behind the casket, and together they sneak out of the cellar, having to very carefully climb over these men because they're literally all piled on the floor around them, to get up the stairs and out of the house. And together they run back towards the home, but when they start to head back, they notice that the trail of ashes is gone. It's blown away throughout the course of the day, and it's impossible to see, but there is a full moon out, and as our young heroine, who has no name, it's so irritating, looks around, she spots a trail of lentils and peas that have sprouted and are glowing silvery in the moonlight. So somebody was looking out for her. They rushed those plants. And she follows the trail of peas and lentils all the way back home. And she tells her dad, oh my God, you won't believe the night I've just had. And he's like, cool, you're welcome home. Go to bed because your bridegroom will be here tomorrow. And she's like, oh, you didn't care? Okay, great. I also have a new servant for us. And he's like, great. What a great gift from your bridegroom. I don't actually care to hear about anything that happened or why you're coming back in the middle of the night, unaccompanied and alone. I have no questions. I love that guy. So she's like, cool. Okay, so we'll just wait till tomorrow then. So the next night, the bridegroom joins them for dinner, and he's like, I was waiting for you at my house, and I didn't see you. Did you get lost along the way, my dear? And she's like, no. Nope. And she says nothing as the food is being served. And to break up the awkward silence, her dad's like, why don't we all tell stories? Because he's the most tone-deaf person on the planet. And so they go around the table telling stories, and when it finally gets to our hero's turn, she's like, all right, I have a story. It's actually not much of a story. It's kind of a dream I had yesterday. It's kind of weird, but, go with me on this. I dreamed that I followed this trail of ash into the wood until I found this mysterious cabin way in the deep, dark forest. And when I got there, this bird told me to leave, and I didn't listen. But there was all these, looted goods just scattered around the house, and I thought that was strange, but there wasn't anybody in it until I got down to the basement where this old woman told me that I was actually in super danger. And so she hid me, and I hid behind a casket, and I saw, this is the craziest thing, I saw a bunch of men, and my dear, honey, sweetheart, sweetie pie, you were there with all these men, and at this point, the groom is like, what a silly dream, maybe you should just stop talking, and she's like, no, let me finish my story, and the dad is like, no, let her finish her story, I am absolutely invested in what's happening here. Go on, sweetie. So she's like, great, thanks, Dad. It's about time you listen to me. But so all these men come in, you were there, and they bring this young woman down and they give her 3 cups of wine, 1 white, 1 red, and 1 yellow. And with the yellow one, she dies. And like, that was strange enough. And the groom's like, we don't need to talk about this. Have you guys talked about the weather yet? The weather is actually really, really fascinating. And she's like, no, let me finish. In my dream, after the woman dies, they cut her into pieces and they cut this ring off her finger, but it actually goes flying through the air and lands behind the caskets where I'm hiding. And after they cut her into pieces, they cook her, they eat her, and then they get super drunk and just pass out. And I have to sneak out with the old woman, and I leave the bird there because I'm a jerk, and I end up coming home and nobody cares. Isn't that the craziest dream? And at this point, the bridegroom's like, well, that's just preposterous. And the dad's like, that's really, really sus, because you did come back with an old woman last night. And she's like, it's so crazy, isn't it? The dreams that silly women have. And the bridegroom's like, okay. If that was a thing, like, you would have proof and you have no proof. And she's like, no, but the craziest thing is I woke up this morning and look what was in my pocket. And out of the, like, pocket of her dress, she produces the thing with the ringer. Oh my God, the ring with the finger. Words are really hard, guys. I'm sorry. And she puts it on the table and her dad's like, was that all true? Why didn't you tell me? So together with the other men in the home, they chase the robber bridegroom out of the home and end up, lynch mobbing him, I guess. They get rid of this guy. And the miller comes back to tell his daughter, like, you're safe now. You'll never have to marry that man. And she's like, I'm going to stop you right here. I'm never going to have to marry a man I don't choose. Those are the rules from now on. Also, we should probably let the local, like, police know that there's a bunch of robbers in the forest, and I can point them to the trail of lentils and peas I left in the woods, and then maybe have them bring me back the bird, because I'm feeling kind of guilty that I left it there. It was just trying to warn me, and I was a jerk to it. And the dad's like, you're right. Absolutely. You marry who you choose from now on. We're going to get rid of those robbers. And then maybe we'll just pick up some of those riches and you won't actually have to get married because we'll be well off. And she's like, great plan. Excellent idea. I'm glad you had it. And that's it. That's the end of the story. She lives happily ever after, a wealthy and single woman, with that poor old cook lady, I guess, like just taking up residence in her home and probably becoming the help because they don't really do great things for old women in stories, guys. But her dad never tries to force her to marry again. She lives happily ever after. I imagine the bird comes to live with her too because she owes that bird everything and did nothing for it. And that's it. That's the end. Well, let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed that story. I certainly enjoy it. It's kind of a great one. A little bit grisly, and I try not to dwell on the idea that these men just kept bringing home women to eat them that often. It's a little bit terrifying, a little bit Bluebeardian. There's some Bluebeard aspects to the story. I want to tell the tale of Bluebeard at a later point in time. But I think I will save it for now. So if you aren't familiar with Bluebeard, I will eventually tell that story on this. So, keep an eye out for that. But it does have some aspects of that tale. And otherwise, it's kind of just like a fun one where this girl knows her mind and all the men around her are just gross. And so, she has to sort of stand up and advocate for herself the entire time. And she does. And she wins. And then that slimy dude dies, which is the best way to end this story. So, yeah. Until next time, guys, if you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate your face. And I will catch you all on the next one. Until then, happy crafting. Bye!